All right, welcome back to ABA Exam Review and our fifth BCBA practice exam. We're going to go through the next 10 questions together and break them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. As always, when you pass, please let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. 161. Tara is an excellent student but has ADHD. Yesterday, while taking an exam, she could hear construction workers drilling and hammering outside of the window. She ended up earning a C on the exam. What would be the most behavior analytic description of why Tara earned a C? So when we talk about behavior analytic descriptions, we're looking for objective, measurable reasons for why Tara earned a C. So the cause. What is the cause of Tara earning a C? So we know a couple things. We know she's an excellent student. We know she has ADHD. We also know there was drilling and hammering outside of her window. Now, what is more objective and what is more measurable? Is it Tara's ADHD or is it drilling and hammering? Well, to me, the variables that seem most apparently different and then measurable and then observable will be the drilling and hammering. And my first instinct, I think the most parsimonious, the simplest instinct would be to attribute the cause to drilling and hammering. So let's see what our answer choices have. A, Tara has ADHD, which, combined with the drilling, led to her being distracted during the exam. All right, we don't want to attribute the cause to this hypothetical construct of ADHD. Yes, we acknowledge ADHD exists, but just like if you're working with someone with autism, you don't attribute the cause to autism because we can't cure it, we can't change it, it's there, it's permanent. It's unchangeable. It's stable. We can't attribute that cause. We're looking for environmental things, observable and measurable things. So the drilling could have caused distraction, but the ADHD is a hypothetical construct, and this becomes an explanatory fiction. So B, Tara became overstimulated during the exam, which caused her to score lower than usual. This time we're saying the overstimulation was the cause. Again, the overstimulation is this hypothetical construct, and we're now using an explanatory fiction. It's all about what are we saying caused the low score. C, Tara became overstimulated during the exam and scored lower than usual because of the drilling and hammering outside. Now, what is different about C? Well, now we're saying the drilling and hammering is causing the overstimulation. It's causing the lower score. This is acceptable because drilling and hammering, we can objectively hear it. It's measurable. It's a clear change in the environment that we can see, observe, and measure. So when we say the cause was the drilling and hammering, this observable, measurable variable, we're being very behavior analytic. And then D, Tara's lack of ability in her ADHD diagnosis led to her scoring lower than usual on the exam. Remember, we never attribute a cause to a disability or a diagnosis. Those things are stable, right? We're not changing her ADHD. You don't change autism. It's there. We've got to find other reasons, right? So saying it's the ADHD is an explanatory fiction. The only one where we're really identifying these obviously different variables that are observable and measurable is C. She became overstimulated and scored lower than usual because of the drilling and hammering. The drilling and hammering were the cause. 162, you meet with the family to discuss treatment goals for the next 6 months. The family wants their child to start using words to demand for what they want and need. However, you doubt the child has the necessary skills right now to accomplish that goal. What should you do? So you're putting on your behavior analysis cap, your behavior analytic cap here, and you meet with a family and they want their child to start using words to demand, which is great, okay? However, a lot of times when you're working with families, they're going to have expectations that maybe are unrealistic, maybe are unreasonable, maybe not even socially valid. And so your goal as the analyst is to work with them and to get them to see why maybe another goal is better, why this may be unrealistic, because you doubt the child has the necessary skills right now to accomplish that goal. So if you say, okay, sure, I'm going to start getting them to use words to demand in the next 6 months when the next treatment plan is due, your chances of meeting that goal are very low. And so you're going to be using a lot of time when you could have targeted other maybe prerequisite skills, right? Or other goals that are much more achievable rather than ones that are highly unlikely given the skills at the time. So what should you do as the analyst? A, let the parents know that you try your best, but you cannot guarantee they will reach that goal in 6 months. Okay, not bad, right? You're not guaranteeing they're going to reach that goal in 6 months, and you're going to try your best, which you should. However, is there a better way to approach this situation? You already have doubts they have the necessary skills. And if your assessment is correct, then that's probably correct. So why are you even beginning this goal? We want to pick goals that are achievable, right? We want to hit goals we can hit, because as you pick goals, you're essentially shaping bigger and bigger behaviors. So maybe the words demand are the goal, maybe pieces of the word, right? So A is okay. Do we have a better answer? B, acknowledge the parent's request, but explain that communication skills are not a priority right now. Well, communication skills are probably always a priority, especially if this child is not manning autism. If this is autism as a social communication disorder. However, we don't know if it's autism. We just know that they have a communication deficit. So it's probably a priority. You just know this particular goal is unlikely. So C, walk the parents through other possible goals that may support their manning goal. Yes, this is a good place to start. You could say, well, using full words right now might not be possible due to the skills, but what if we teach approximations? What if we teach picture cards? What if we teach other ways to communicate that are going to build up to this goal? And that's a reasonable way of going about it, because now you're picking goals you can actually achieve, and you're picking goals that are going to be accomplished and have a chance at being accomplished, rather than saying, well, I'll give it my best shot for 6 months, and then you waste 6 months, right, on a goal you never knew, or you knew you were never achieving in the first place. And then D, begin treatment. If you're not making progress after 3 months, decide on a different goal. 3 months is way too long. If you do choose to begin treatment, that's going to be a week or two at most. If you see no change, we need to be adaptable, right? We need to be fluid, all right? Everything is data-driven, so ideally you have a lot of data backing up your decisions. And if you don't see any change and you see zero progress, and you know, because you have doubts already and your assessment is good, that they don't have the skills, then we change. The best approach, though, is to trust your assessment, trust your skills as an analyst, and say, we can't accomplish this goal, but what about these other goals that are going to not only be achievable, but also support the manning goal in the future? So C is your best answer. 163, after hitting the wrong note while playing a piano solo, Mozart forces himself to hit the wrong note 10 more times in a row as part of his self-instruction. What is the best way to describe what Mozart is attempting? So the key here, right, for what Mozart is attempting is self-instruction. So this is a self-management question. And that's important in this context because this is a very specific self-management intervention. Mozart is forcing himself to do what? Well, he's forcing himself to engage in the wrong behavior 10 times in a row. Now, we know it isn't positive practice because positive practice is doing the right behavior over and over. But negative practice seems pretty good because negative practice is you have to go engage in the wrong behavior over and over. However, when it has to do with self-management, negative practice is actually considered masked practice. Now, masked practice, you could say, is a type of negative practice, then you probably wouldn't be wrong. But when we're looking for the best and the most specific answer, that's what we're going to do on the exam. Masked practice is better because masked practice is a self-management strategy. He's using self-management. He's using self-instruction. So the best way to describe is masked practice. He's not using negative punishment because he's not taking anything away from himself. He's forcing himself to engage in this wrong response 10 more times. He's engaging in masked practice because he's engaging in self-instruction and self-management. 164. Assuming a token economy was in place which required a client to earn 5 tokens to earn a 5-minute break, how might you introduce a bonus response cost? So you want to introduce a bonus response cost. So let's start with what a response cost is. Response cost is the removal of a positive reinforcer. So you're removing a positive reinforcer. Except now we want a bonus response cost. So what changes here? Well, with the bonus response cost, you're providing additional positive reinforcement non-contingently. So if this client gets 5 tokens to earn a 5-minute break, that's his reinforcer, you might say, well, I'll give you you start with 2-minute breaks no matter what, right? That's no matter what. So you get 7 minutes. Okay. When you earn 5 tokens, you essentially get 7 minutes. Your bonus is those 2 minutes. And that bonus is what you're going to take away in the response cost. In a typical response cost, you're going to set this 5-minute break. And then when they earn it, you can take away minutes as you go. With the bonus response cost, you're giving that bonus time. It's already built in, and that's what you're taking away. So let's look for something along those lines. A, take away 1 minute of the 5-minute break each time the client engages in maladaptive behavior. This is kind of your standard response cost, right? They earn the reinforcer, and then you take away the earned reinforcer contingent on behavior. B, take away 1 token each time the client engages in maladaptive behavior. Now, let's say you're going to use your response cost for tokens. B is, again, just a common standard response cost. Bonus response cost would be you have to earn 5 tokens, but you already start with 2 tokens, something like that, right? You've got this bonus built in that I can take away from you. C, provide the client with 2 extra minutes of break in addition to the 5 minutes and take away a minute each time the client engages in maladaptive behavior. Here we go, right? We have our bonus, which is the 2 extra minutes, and then we have our response cost. Take away a minute each time, okay? Break it down, it makes a lot of sense. And then D, none of these represent a bonus response cost. Well, C is going to be our best answer here, right? We're going to provide the client 2 extra minutes of break. That's our bonus. And then we're going to take away a minute each time the client engages in maladaptive behavior. That's our response cost. 165, a study analyzes the effectiveness of different styles of preference assessments when selecting reinforcers for zoo animals. This study would likely get published in what journal? Now, let's say you read this question and I say, well, I don't know any journals. I have no clue. That's okay. Think about your different categories or domains of behaviorism, right? We have applied behavior analysis. We have experimental analysis of behavior. And then we have behavior analysis in practice and conceptual behavior analysis, right? You know, behaviorism and conceptual behavior analysis is more about theory. Behavior analysis in practice is what technicians commonly do, what we do sometimes, where we are actually implementing these interventions. And then you have experimental analysis of behavior and applied behavior analysis. Well, the experimental analysis of behavior is where it started. This is what Skinner started with when he was experimenting with pigeons. Okay. We're not experimenting on humans. Okay. In this case, they're looking at zoo animals. So they're taking behavior analytic concepts and applying them to animals and seeing the outcome. When you take this science and you apply it to humans, now we're talking applied behavior analysis. So that's really the distinction, right? Experimental analysis of behavior is typically in a controlled setting. It's typically with animals. When we get to applied behavior analysis, we're now taking that science and doing research using humans in real settings. And then behavior analysis in practice, we're taking what we've learned at research and applying it to interventions. So if we have this zoo animal experiment, it would likely be the Journal of Experimental Analysis of Behavior. An elementary school cafeteria fills up at lunchtime and kids are talking to one another about their days. As the noise grows, one of the teachers reminds David that if they become too loud, they won't be allowed to talk for the remainder of the lunch period. What type of punishment is this? So we have all kind of different punishment related to removal and timeout. What happens to David here? Well, everyone's talking, blah, blah, blah. Noise grows, right? And then as they get louder and louder, right? David gets louder and louder. The teacher says, David, if you get too loud, I won't let you talk. I'm going to take away your reinforcement, right? You can't talk, okay? So what type of punishment is this? A, an exclusion timeout. One exclusion timeout would be taking David away, right? He's excluded from the group. We're not taking David away. A partition timeout would be setting up some sort of cubicle, so to speak, right? Some sort of blockers for David. Not doing that. C, contingent observation, would be removing David from the group and making him watch the group. We're not doing that. David is still with the group, but what we're doing is we're terminating specific reinforcer contact. David is no longer getting the reinforcer contact of talking with his friends, having them talk back, engagement. We're cutting that off. We're not allowing David to talk. We're not excluding him. We're not making him observe contingently, and we're not setting up any partition. All we're doing is eliminating a very specific contact of a certain reinforcer. 167, a researcher is planning on using a 3-phase alternative treatment design, which will include a baseline, an intervention, and a best result phase. When should the researcher start gathering IOA data? This is really an IOA question, okay? Now we have our, alternative treatment design or multi-element design, which is fine. They give you some background on what he's using. What we're really talking about is when should the researcher gather inter-observer agreement data. It's basically saying we have 3 phases, baseline, intervention, and best result. When does IOA matter? When do we want IOA? So A, once intervention begins, IOA collection should start and continue into the 3rd phase. So A is saying we start collecting data in intervention and into the last phase, but that would skip baseline. We don't want to skip baseline. We want IOA for all phases, ideally. B, the researcher should gather IOA data for at least 80% of sessions during intervention. Not necessarily, right? 20% to 33% is typically a standard, okay? Additionally, when should they start gathering IOA data? B is answering how much IOA data should they gather. So it's not really answering the question. C, IOA is only necessary in the intervention phase. Well, no, you want IOA across all phases because you want to make sure your data is valid, accurate, reliable, and believable. And then D, IOA collection should begin in the baseline phase. Yeah, it should begin as soon as your intervention starts, right? You want believable data, okay? It's going to help. It's going to help when you have another person or more than one other person involved in gathering data and comparing it to yours from the beginning, okay? So you're really going to be able to find out quickly, are you making mistakes or are you gathering data accurately? So IOA collection should begin in the baseline phase and really continue throughout the entire experiment. 168. A PhD student is taking comprehensive exams this week. They must pass these exams in order to propose their final dissertation to their committee. The exam lasts 8 hours and there are 6 questions. The student must answer all 6 questions and write for at least 5 hours before they are allowed to leave. What type of schedule does this most resemble? So we're looking at reinforcement schedules here. And when you have 2 or more basic schedules, we have a compound schedule, all right? And compound schedules can be very confusing at first. I recommend not spending too much time on them and really understanding the basics of compound schedules, okay? Is there an SD? Is there not? And then what compound schedules are used? In this case, what is the schedule? Well, the student has to answer 6 questions. So we have a fixed response, or fixed ratio, I should say, and they must write for at least 5 hours. So a fixed interval. So we have a ratio schedule and an interval schedule, and the student must complete both. So when you have a compound schedule that features a ratio schedule and an interval schedule where both schedules must be completed, what do we call that? A, alternative. Well, alternative features a ratio and interval schedule, but this is an either or, right? They could do either of these in that situation. What we have is a conjunctive schedule where we've got a ratio schedule and a variable schedule, and both must be completed for reinforcement. Concurrent, of course, is matching law, right? It's choice. So you've got 2 schedules for 2 different behaviors, allowing choice. And then chained, right? There's no indication that this is chained together, that one must come before the next, okay? All we know is they must complete both, right? It's a conjunctive schedule. Both schedules must be completed before you're allowed to leave. 169, you, a behavior analyst, are observing a behavior technician run discrete trials with one of your clients. After the technician finishes a trial, you suggest that they deliver reinforcement more quickly and that they should limit their feedback to just the target behavior. In response, the technician says they don't necessarily agree with that and gives a reason why. How should you respond? As an analyst, the majority of your job is training. It's training technicians, training parents, and dealing with these situations. That's what the job is, right? Yeah, you design treatment plans. Yes, you design interventions, but mostly you're going to be dealing with people. You've got to get used to it. In this case, you're observing a technician who finishes a trial, You say, why don't you deliver reinforcement quickly and limit your feedback? In response, the technician says they don't necessarily agree and gives a reason why. Okay, so this is kind of an ethical question. It's a supervision question. What do? Your technician says, I don't agree. Well, you've got to remember the technician is part of the team. They have a voice. And most of the time, they're going to be with the client more than you are, almost all of the time, unless you're directly implementing things. And so if they don't agree, that's okay. BACB code and task list encourages open communication. However, you still are in charge, right? You're still responsible for the case. So how should you respond in this situation? A, remind the technician that their job is implementing your plans, not designing the plans. Now, that's a little harsh, okay? Yes, their job is to implement the plans, not to design them, but they have a right to speak up and give their opinion. B, discipline the behavior technician in an appropriate manner. The behavior technician has done nothing wrong just by simply wondering why they might be doing something and they not agreeing with something. That's perfectly fine. C, accept the feedback from the technician, then justify your reasoning for the changes. Yes, accept the feedback. Tell them, I hear you. I understand where you're coming from. This is why I think we should do it. And then they do it, and then you look at the data. Either it's successful or not. It's a great thing about what we do. We have data, and the data are going to tell us exactly the outcome, right? The data are going to indicate whether or not it's successful, and it's going to decide for us. And then D suggests that the technician move to another case due to potential conflicts of interest. Well, no, they're being a good technician. You want a technician who's vocal, all right? You want a technician who cares enough to give feedback. So what should you do? Accept the feedback from the technician, justify your reason for the changes, and then go from there. You tell them to implement it. You go to the data a few weeks from now and make your decision. And then finally, which of the following answer choices is considered a codic? So we asked about duplics last week. Duplics have formal similarity. Codics do not. It's the main difference. So motor imitation, coics, they're formally similar. Textuals are not. A textual is a codic, so that's the main difference. Duplics, formal similarity. Codics lack that formal similarity. Codic would be a textual. Excellent. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials. Let us know when you pass so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going.